Hello, WordNerds, and happy Sunday! Tonight's chat is all about the first 4 impressions you get on the inside of a book, and we're not talking covers tonight. The first 4 are your first sentence, first paragraph, first page, first chapter, and we all know how you have to hook a reader as quickly as possible, so we're going to be talking a little bit about some of our first favorites and also how we write those first 4 things in our manuscript. And to start things off, we're going to share one first sentence from, or one of our favorite first sentences from some of the books we've read. Kaylin?
Okay, I think I mentioned this last week, but this just is one of those sentences that just sticks with me. It's from Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, and the first sentence reads, "The early summer sky was the color of cat vomit." And it's weird enough to where it catches your attention, but it's also weird enough to like, all right, is the rest of it this weird? So it keeps me reading.
I love that one. Mm-hmm. Do you have a good one? Or is it a bad one?
No, me?
You.
Okay. This is something I vlogged about earlier, but it's called White Space, and I do this thing where I go around the bookstore and just pull books off and read the first sentence, and this one made me buy it. I had no choice. So the first sentence is, it's a paragraph. At first, Mom thinks there are mice because of the scritching in the walls. This is very weird. Marmalade the Orange Tom is such a good mouser. But then Mom spies a dirty footprint high up on the wall of her walk-in closet. And that was just the first paragraph, and I was like, why is there a footprint on the wall? So I needed to buy it.
Kelly?
I haven't actually read this book yet, but as I was going through my bookshelves for ideas for this chat, I picked up The Chaos of Stars by Kirsten White, and the first line is, "When I was a little girl, I still believed I was part of the world's secret magic," which I just thought was really pretty and really matched, like, the inside so nice, and it all just came together really nicely with that first line.
I've got to read that book. I just finished her other 2.
I liked that one.
Megan?
Oh, yeah.
I was holding you.
So mine is from Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea by April Tuchok. The first sentence is, "You stop fearing the devil when you're holding his hand."
Oh.
That's great. That is a fantastic first line.
That is a really good
love that one.
What's the book called again?
Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea.
All right. So that's on my to-read list now. And my first sentence is a very, very short one, so I'll probably share the first paragraph. It's from The Book Thief, and the first sentence is, "First the colors." The first paragraph is, "First the colors, then the humans. That's usually how I see things, or at least how I try." Oh. And
yeah, that's kind of
from Death's point of view, so it's just this book.
It's in Death's point of view? Okay, I have to read that like that.
And it's good.
It's
Death
so
is not
good.
what you would think it should be.
No, and it's like, the first sentences set the tone for the entire book, and hopefully, if they're done right, they will carry out a theme. So that first sentence, I think, says a lot to me, "First the colors," especially for The Book Thief and the theme of the Holocaust and death and everything, seeing things in colors. I don't know, that's struck home with me for some reason. But I love it.
You really need to read that book.
Yes.
Wait, who hasn't read it?
I haven't read it yet.
Read it.
Shame.
Please. I promise it's a fast read.
I want to read it before I see the movie, so.
Yeah.
So first 4 impressions, or the 4 first impressions. We, as writers, I'm sure we've all read like hundreds of articles that say how important the first line of your book is. How do you deal with that pressure put on one sentence? How do you cook up the perfect first line?
Overthink it constantly.
I always start with death.
Revise it, rewrite it, revise it. A lot.
Yeah.
I definitely always start with something really weird, like somebody's always blowing up or being set on fire, or something bad is usually happening in my very first sentence for some reason.
Yeah, starting with action seems to be great.
Start with death.
Yeah.
Start with
Every
something big.
manuscript I've written, the first sentence has been like, someone is dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm at a funeral. Or
Let's see. The first sentence of Ignite is someone's dying. First sentence of Entice is a bunch of people dying in a war. First sentence of Madly Deeply is not about death.
but the rest of the book is.
It's a bit foreshadowing.
I quite like first sentences. I think because my writing process, like when I have an idea, I don't let myself start writing it until like the first scene comes to me.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like built up so much steam, and I'm so excited that like the first chapter just pours out of me, and they're actually usually the least revised part of my books because I love them so much.
For some of mine, they're the most revised because my beginnings are either like too heavy in exposition, and then I just go back and cut it out, or I just have no idea what I'm doing yet. Sometimes it comes easier. Like, have you ever not had to overthink a first sentence and just kind of, it just happened like magic?
I think in like my Evernote file where I have ideas for future books, I have a few first sentences that I love sitting in there, but I can't say yet whether or not they'll actually make it through.
Mm-hmm.
So I never write those books.
Mm-hmm. I feel like because I plot so much, I almost never feel like the first sentence just came to me because I'm envisioning this character, this first scene for so long that like it loses a little bit of that crazy magic. But
I think a lot of mine come by chance or accident. Like I'll just kind of, again, I'll circle back to the beginning and start rewriting it. But like the anthology that I'm working on right now, the first sentence of that was kind of just an accident. It's the first sentence is, this morning's cards come out unfavorably, and it deals with like tarot readings and palms and the occult and death. So that one kind of just happened.
I think on my first draft of my current MS, like when I started it before the action actually happened, and it had more of a contemporary feel. A lot of my beta readers told me, so I had to cut it. But it's still one of my favorite. It's kind of like the first two sentences, I guess. But it's once when I was younger, my dad told me one of the first profound things I've ever heard. He told me, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. And that it goes on is like filtered throughout the entire book. And that actually, it's a big quote in her life, and like I love it, so I'm trying to find a way to fit it in the book now. Because it's not my first sentence anymore, and I want it to be so bad.
I believe in you.
It'll go in there somewhere.
Tucked in.
That's cool. I want to like work on that because mine are always death. Like the first sentence of my current work in progress is "Mama will be dead soon." Someone's got to be dying.
You got to start it on a cheerful note. So.
Chills.
Oh, and we should mention, real quick, before we get too deep into this, the reason the first sentence, first paragraph, first page, first chapter is so important is not only because we want to hook the readers into the story, because usually if you pick up a book at a bookshop, you look in it, you'll read the first sentences, and then you'll decide, I want to keep reading or I want to put it down. But also, literary agents, you only get a couple of pages to send them, and you gotta make those count. Which is intimidating.
Anxiety.
Although what I was going to say was, like, when I was looking through my shelves for books for this one, I didn't pull any, but a lot of the first sentences were just like, and move on. Like, so, if I kept reading, I'm sure the first paragraph would be bigger than that, but...
Yeah, and that was my thing when I was talking on Monday about the 4 first impressions. I've never read a first line and went, and then put the book down and stopped reading.
Yeah.
Like, either the first line has a really big impact or none at all, for me.
Yeah.
I will say, though, if the first line is really convoluted and it's, like, too long and too pretty, I will put it down then. Because
or, like,
I'm
riddled with mistakes.
Right now. Like, I don't have time to figure this out.
Or can you imagine reading a first sentence where, like, the grammar's atrocious and there's already a typo and you're just like, is this, like, gonna carry on through the rest of the book? I think I'll pass. Like, that would be the only reason I'd set it down. But I usually give it at least 1 chapter, usually 3.
I like to say that I'd give it 1 chapter, but I have gotten midway through the first chapter and stopped reading.
I have too.
It depends.
Sure.
Like, if I bought it, I'm more likely to commit. If it's a library book,
Yeah. If it's a library book, I feel no attachment.
See, I tried to read Maze Runner, and I really, really, really wanted to read it. I borrowed it from the library, so that's why I gave it 3 chapters, and I just couldn't connect to the voice. Like, I'm going to try again later.
That's actually exactly how much I gave the Maze Runner.
It's
Before I put
tough.
it.
The trailer
It's a tough
looks
voice.
amazing for the movie.
Right?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to
It was going with The Fault in Our Stars. I'm like, all right, I have to read this, and I went to check it out at my library on ebook, and I'm currently like 111 out of like 157. So I'm not even gonna read it this year.
Oh,
My
wait.
little brother, I gave him all these cool books for Christmas and stuff, and my parents gave him all these cool books, but he doesn't like reading. So this Christmas, I'm just gonna take some of them with me.
It's amazing, but how little time you actually have to hook a reader in, just because I feel like I used to be, I think someone else, one of the other WordNerds said this, like I used to be the type of person that would literally continue to force myself to read a book even though, if I bought it, even though I didn't enjoy it, because I felt like I'd committed to it and I needed to finish it. But now there are so many good books out there, and my to-be-read pile is so huge that if I don't like a book within the first chapter, I won't. With so much competition, you can't afford to have a weak or a boring start to your book.
And there's also, like, that first chapter, even if we're just considering that as a whole and not just the first sentence or paragraph, you work so hard on the rest of your manuscript, and it's, like, painful to think someone would set it down after just reading the tiniest chapter. Like, most of my books are around 30 chapters or 33, and you get just the first chapter. Whew.
I've actually seen a lot of people, like, I want to say maybe bloggers or a lot of people on Twitter. I don't remember exactly how we came up on this topic, but they were saying pretty much the first page is their make or break point.
Wow.
At the bottom of the first page, that's like when they're skimming books at the store to buy, they'll read the first page, and then that's enough for them to say yes or no.
That is
crazy.
intimidating.
Not much of a chance.
I mean, that's not a lot of words on the first page.
No.
Yeah.
It's not even a full, like you showed in your video, it's not a full first page. It's like
it's barely more than the first paragraph at most points.
But on the bright side, we don't have to get it perfect in the first draft.
Yeah, that is the good news.
Yeah, especially once you have that whole manuscript finished, you have such a better idea of what you want the tone of the book to be and what foreshadowing you want to be there right from page 1.
That's why it's usually best to go back and super revise the earlier chapters, especially for someone like me who doesn't plot terribly much, and I kind of might end up somewhere different at the end, and I want to make the beginning match up to the end better in tone or style or, like you said, foreshadowing something. Revisions are your friend.
And so are beta readers too. Like I said, I am so in love with my first original opening line, but I was told by several people that being a, paranormal science fiction, it was reading contemporary, and that's kind of a big throw-off for the rest of the book. So not only did I have to nix the first line and that first paragraph, but that entire first chapter had to go. And it was hard.
I
really liked it
killing my darlings.
To me, it was such a really good character-building scene, but it's definitely something that I can shove into later chapters. So definitely, beta readers are your best friends when it comes to tone.
Yeah. As much as you love a line, try not to get too attached because
You might have to cut it. We have a question from Lally Donald. She asks, should the first sentence have to do with the book, like have a very heavy impact? Her first sentence in her manuscript right now is, he can't even remember his own name, which I like that first sentence.
Yeah, that's enough to keep me reading. Like, why doesn't he remember his first name? It has to pose, like, an indirect question for the reader to want to read more.
It must intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Pull
that's a
them
good way of putting it. An indirect question, like never do the, literal.
You don't want to start off with a
rhetorical
question. Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah.
But if you do it like that, no, I think that's a good first sentence. It doesn't have to have too heavy of an impact. Like, your first sentence doesn't have to encompass your entire book, because that would break your sentence. It's too much weight on just a couple of words. But it'd be good if it's kind of leaning that way. Like, if the part of your book is why he doesn't remember his name and has to do with something of that, could be good.
Yeah, like City of Bones, the first sentence is, "You've got to be kidding me." And it's the bouncer. And so the first sentence isn't like that spectacular, but the rest of that paragraph is the guy with the crazy weapon, and he bends it, and then he walks in, and he's like so easy to fool them.
Wasn't that a quote, too? Wasn't that literally the bouncer talking?
Yeah.
Which is
usually a no-no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a bunch of places that, I think particularly from literary agents I've seen this, they don't like manuscripts that start off with a quote from a character because they haven't met the character yet, and it's kind of like, I don't know you.
Why should I care about what you say?
Yeah. It's not, it's not forbidden. You're allowed to do it, but it's just something I've seen repeated a couple of times that it might be better to hold off a little bit unless it's like a really impactful quote that they're saying.
Trying to see if I had any other ones.
I've got one from the Diviners. This is actually the prologue of the Diviners, so it's like a super first, not even a first chapter. First sentence here is, in a townhouse at a fashionable address on Manhattan's Upper East Side, every lamp blazes. Which sets out like, why are all the lights on?
It's also good because there's so much voice in that one sentence.
Yeah. Tone is set. You kind of get the location. You almost get the time period because lamps are blazing instead of lights or TVs.
Yeah. That's something that's really hard. Something that's really hard to define, but what is really important in a first paragraph or chapter is having a voice that draws you in. Like you guys were saying that you couldn't get into the Maze Runner because of the voice. So, but again, that's one of those things that you develop over a period of time and writing lots and lots and lots, and also hard to fix if you don't have like an intriguing or an interesting voice. So, just something that comes with practice and time, I guess.
One of the things, too, that I think kind of made me back away from the Maze Runner was he used a lot of new vocabulary right from the very, very beginning. And some people really, really like that because it gives, like, you're in the world immediately. But for me, I was like, I have no clue what's going on. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, like vocabulary that was, like
made up
to that
words.
World?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And, like,
it's funny because you have to have such a balance for that, because it is good to not dump a bunch of backstory on the reader and be like, well, I'm calling it this because this happened in society. But it's also, you have to be careful that you don't do that and just dump a whole bunch of made up words and stuff onto your reader's head and try. If they feel too confused right away, they'll put it down too.
It's like the opposite of info dump.
Yeah.
It's like question mark dump. Like what? Not
enough
questions. Like it's good to have some questions immediately, but if you have too many, I'm just gonna be like, this seems like it's gonna be a chore. So I'm just gonna walk away from it.
This book had like all the things happening, and I just it's a lot of baggage I can't handle.
You can definitely introduce someone to a new world without overwhelming them with the new world by like taking it one step at a time and maybe not dumping everything on them at once. Like don't use 3 made-up words in one sentence. Use 1 and space it out a little bit. That type of thing. But
use it in context that we can like gather its meaning without still being incredibly confused. I think pacing is also like crazy important at the beginning of a book, because right now I'm reading Fragments, which is the sequel to Partials by Dan Wells. And I really loved Partials, but I can't get into Fragments yet because the pacing is so slow. And I'm like waiting for something to happen. And if I wasn't invested in the series, I would have set it down already because first chapter was just slow. And I was like, I don't have time for a slow book. I need to get sucked in quick. I don't have time to read.
Yeah, hook me in with the action. That's probably a good thing to think about when you're writing your first chapter, is that people are putting aside specific time in order to read, and they might not have a lot of it. So you gotta hook them in right away.
Definitely. And I think the first book did it well. It's just you also have to make sure that the sequels do it as well as the first book in the series, because you can still set down a book in a series. Like, I'm just doing it because I'm committed and I want to read it. So I'm just just push through.
The book you picked up in the bookstore in your video, Erin, you picked up Never Fade, which is the sequel to The Darkest Minds, and it starts with a prologue dream sequence. And it was so different from The Darkest Minds. Like, I own the book and I still haven't finished it, even though I loved the first book. Because, like, I can't get drawn in. And the opening didn't do it for me, just like it didn't do it for you when you picked it up randomly.
Well, my friend was like, dream, prologue, put it down. I was like, whoa, okay. This is a no-go for you. All right. So that's something we could talk about, too, with beginnings is avoiding all the cliche stuff, especially if you're going to be querying agents someday and you want a good beginning. So stuff like having your character, even for, if someone asks me, hey, can you read my story on Wattpad, and it starts with a dream or someone waking up to their alarm clock, I'm like, no, click to the next one, because that's so overdone. So
yeah, and I think in the
avoid
case
cliches
of
like the plague.
I think prologues, they're usually more for the author than they are for the reader. Like, if you want to write a prologue in your first draft, go for it, but the reader usually doesn't need it.
You've got to get them out of your system. That's sometimes it takes me writing a prologue to actually get into the story itself, but then take it out. Unless, there's something actually important in it, which there usually isn't, you can take it out, and you're going to start right when the action starts, theoretically, because the prologue would be like pre-action and then action. We have a couple of comments. One, Emma is celebrating her anniversary, so that is why she's not here.
Happy anniversary!
Yay. Booksara says when she goes to Hastings, which I'm assuming is a bookstore, I haven't heard of it, but I'm assuming, she looks for books. She's always looking first at the title, cover, back cover, and first or second sentences. Yeah. Cover is big, but
the cover is a huge one. I mean, we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it forever, that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but that's definitely something that
people do.
Absolutely. There's no denying.
I've seen people say that they'll buy a cover that's beautiful, even if the book inside is terrible, just to have it on their shelf. Like, they might not ever read it. Or
I wouldn't go so far as to say if the book inside is terrible, I want to read it, but I definitely buy books just because they're pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
That's
See, I do,
20% of the books I buy.
Yeah, I read ebooks first, and then it helps if the cover is really pretty because, what is it, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe.
Yes.
I read it already. I own the ebook. I will own that in paperback because that cover is beautiful.
Gorgeous. Yeah, for me, the only thing determining ebooks is price. Otherwise, I'll just buy it in paperback if I want it. But if it's a price for 99 cents, I'm like, all right.
The cover and the title is important too. Like, that's why I picked up Daughter of Smoke and Bone off the bookshelf. Is just because I was like, oh my god, the cover. Oh my god, the title. It's like they're both so beautiful. And
Is it just me though? Because I don't know if that was the first title to come out with that structure, but I feel like there's a lot of books that are coming out that is basically the same something of something and something.
Yeah, for sure. Forest of Hands and Teeth.
I think it is that book that started it.
And I'm starting to get to the point to where I'm like, I see that, and I'm like, I want to like you, book, but I can't get past the title. because it's so overdone that it just doesn't have that appeal to me anymore.
See, what's interesting...
I go to the synopsis. That's the selling point for me if I'm not in a bookstore.
What's interesting for me for Daughter of Smoke and Bone is that's a book that Kelly actually gave me, and I was like, yes, because I've been wanting to read it. But the moment I knew that I was going to like the book wasn't the first sentence. It was actually before the first sentence, the quote on the page leading up to it that said, "Once upon a time, an angel and the devil fell in love. It did not end well." And I was like, if this is it, I'm going to read this, and I'm going to love it. It's my kind of book. And because the first sentence of the actual chapter isn't that impeccable. It's walking to school over the snow-muffled cobbles. Karu had no sinister premonitions about the day. Like, it's good, but it doesn't knock me off my chair.
Right.
You don't, from that, realize how great of a book that's going to be.
Yeah.
No, I haven't actually read this book. It's not a drop to drink, but the first line on this is keeping it like towards the top of my TBR. It's, Lynn was 9 the first time she killed to defend the pond. The sweet smell of water luring the man to be picked off like the barn swallows that dared to swoop in for a drink. That's a really great opening line. It's I like how long it is. It gives you more of a chance to think than just those really, really small lines.
It's funny because the first line is I think that was the first line of her query, too, because I've read that query. It's a really good one.
That's impressive that it stayed then.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Withstood this.
And it has a beautiful cover.
Yeah, it does.
When you traditionally publish, you can't you don't have much say in your cover, so it's like not your fault if you don't like the cover. But hers is beautiful.
Which just makes your first line and sentence even more important. Because you have no control over the cover. Now, if you're indie, you better make it work.
Yeah.
Because you have no excuses. So do we like shorter first sentences or longer, or have we seen both that we like?
I think I've seen both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen both.
Although I do usually find the shorter ones work better in conjunction with the lines that come after. Like, there's not a lot that...
Yeah, I think the shorter ones have maybe a bigger impact because they have to be, like, really, really good and have such an impact in so few words. But that line was really good, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, what is it? Looking for Alaska by John Green. That first line is huge. Like, that was like a paragraph.
The first line of The Fault in Our Stars is also pretty big. I think it might just be John Green. Which
I think Looking for Alaska is just that right before he moves, his mom threw him a going-away party. I was looking at that, like...
Yeah, wasn't that like a semicolon there? Like, I thought that.
Yeah, I don't remember the setup.
So, do we have a style for our first sentences? Does anybody like tend to only write short ones or long ones?
I tend to do short.
I just looked back at Ignite and Entice both have short ones. Ignite's is Warm, Slick, and Rusty Red, and Entice's is I'm Trapped in a Sea of Screams. But Madly Deeply is longer.
I think I vary because the one I read earlier was kind of long-ish, and the one that I exchanged it for is, at this point, I'm pretty sure my brain is conspiring against me. And that's kind of quick and to the point. Again, this is still the first draft, so that may change a lot by the time it's done. But that's what it is standing at currently.
I think I like the longer sentences as like if you have an old-timey creepy feel to it. I really like the longer ones. Like in Shadow and Bone, the first sentence is, the servants called them Malinchki, little ghosts, because they were the smallest and the youngest, and because they haunted the Duke's house like giggling phantoms, darting in and out of rooms, hiding in cupboards to eavesdrop, sneaking into the kitchen to steal the last of the summer peaches. Oh, and I like that, because I'm like little kids running around a creepy house. Shadow and Bone.
Oh, I've read that. Okay.
I've got to read that still. It's been on my list too long.
And all 3 are out now. You wouldn't even have to wait. You could binge read all of them.
Oh, there we go. I gotta finish a couple books first, and then I'll finish writing a couple books, and then I'll get them. Ugh. Timelines.
Never ends.
Anything in comment land?
Lally Donald just said when she read Cruel Beauty, which Emma recommended, she wasn't drawn in, probably because she thought it was going to be disgustingly, you know what I mean, romantic. I haven't heard of, no, I've heard of Cruel Beauty, but I didn't.
I've read Cruel Beauty.
Was it disgustingly romantic?
I found it to be more of a creepy book than a romantic one. It's very dark, and there is a romance, but the most important thing is getting out and not dying and stuff. I loved it.
So maybe
I
the first line.
I don't remember what the first line was, though.
Yeah, maybe it didn't portray the.
I want to say that one opens with. She's very, very pessimistic, and I think it opens with her hating her life because she's about to be married to this demon.
Cruel Beauty.
With the intent of killing him.
And what? This is Cruel Beauty?
Cruel
yeah,
Beauty.
It's a dark Beauty and the Beast retelling.
So I am on board. I'm reading all of the Angel and Demon stuff this summer.
Yeah, it's a dark Beauty and the Beast retelling with kind of a Rumpelstiltskin-y twist to it.
Oh.
Who's it by?
Rosamund Hodge.
Not that person then.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, Emma actually listed it as her favorite book of all time when we did those surveys for the party. So that's what made me buy it.
She did. Okay, I'm gonna look. I just looked up the first sentence. Hold on. Open the book. Amazon. I swear to God. All right, first page. Here we go. First sentence. That is not the first sentence. I was raised to marry a monster. I like it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I could see how you'd think it'd be romantic, though. Beauty and the Beast. But raised to marry a monster. That's enough to keep me interested.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that kept me the most interested was just that in the first page or two you get this like feeling of she's not a very pleasant girl, but she's Belle. Like she's the Belle of the story, and so it's like, why is she such an awful person? Why do I want her to succeed?
I like complex characters who are like, are you a good person? Maybe. That's why I love Orange is the New Black.
I haven't watched that yet.
Oh, do it. We've got a comment from Jenny. She says she personally likes short first sentences better because if it's a really good one, there's a really strong impact to it. And she wants to know any advice from skipping time from a first chapter to a second chapter.
So basically like making a prologue.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it always because of the prologuiness that the chapter one would then take on.
Yeah, because I think it can still be a prologue even if you don't call it a prologue.
Even if it's named chapter one. People are like, I'm on to you.
So start with the action. People tend to do that type of thing to avoid backstory, but you just have to find a way to put your backstory in without it making it seem like backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say like a week of normalcy or something is fine. 2 weeks, yeah. I think if you're skipping like years in between your first chapter, though, that's when
it's a prologue,
you should evaluate the title that you're giving it.
Michelle said that Legend has a great first sentence. My mother thinks I'm dead.
Oh, yeah, Legend is a good one.
I haven't read that, but that is a good first sentence.
You would like Legend, I think.
I would. It sounds already like the first sentence. Because it poses a question that you will ask. Why does your mother think you're dead? What happened to make your mother think you're dead? What? And then you read on to answer that what. And Rose said she read Madly Deeply and she liked my first sentence. Thank you, Rose. I liked it too.
I got my shipping confirmation, so it's going to be here tomorrow.
Yay! My mom just got it, and she's like, I got it, and your grandmother has it too. I'm like, exciting! Scary!
Terrifying.
But yay! Which, did I read my first sentence from that? Madly Deeply? Okay, my first sentence for that is, Annalee Wells was a phantom on the shore watching the fog.
I don't even remember what mine are. This is not good.
I'll look it up on Amazon. I've got Amazon.
I have mine on Amazon.
Look at mortality. Here it is.
Dun.
Suspense is killing me.
First sentence. Beginning. Come on, Kindle. Don't be a dick. Chapter 1. Oh, I remember this. Chapter 1 of Mortality. The first sentence is, Alex had me beat and I knew it, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Yeah, you couldn't.
I can live with that. I know
I
in
like that
Duality I
first
started with a zombie point of view, but I don't remember what she had to say. Chelsea Zimmerman is dead and gone.
I remember when I read the first line of Mortality when we exchanged for beta reading, I was like, I'm gonna like working with her. This is already
And look how
on
far
board.
we've come.
So, how do you make, because we obviously spend so much time on that first line, because like you want a first line that's going to feel like a punch so it feels to the gut. Like how do you make a next paragraph that lives up to that? Because I feel like Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, it has an amazing first line, but for me, like, the rest of the first paragraph falls flat because the first line is so amazing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I bet that happens to a couple of authors who focus too much on only their first line and not the first paragraph or page or chapter. Because when you think about it, the first line is probably the place that authors spend the most time thinking about and working on. It's like when you're writing a newspaper article in journalism, you have 200 words and every single word counts. And that first sentence that's going to be probably less than 20 words, you've got to make those 20 words count. But for me, I don't know. I think I just never spend too much time overthinking the first sentence, or I don't think of it alone. I think of it with the paragraph, like within the scene, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no easy answer here. Like,
Yeah, like I feel like, and I'm looking back at like my earlier drafts and like other stuff that I've written, and the first line for me has always been just a single line.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's never been incorporated into a paragraph, and I never noticed that I did that until now.
yeah, I've seen it a lot of the ones I was looking through. It's just like first line, bam, and then.
That's how mine usually end up.
I'm looking at the one I'm working on right now, and it's actually in the paragraph. So is Madly Deeply, and so is Entice. Ignite, I think, may also have been worked into the paragraph. It's so far away on my bookshelf. Hold on, let me
I have Ignite right here.
Too late.
It's worked into the paragraph. It's worked into the paragraph.
I'm back.
I had it right here.
Oh, well,
it's worked into the paragraph.
I was just looking at the Throne of Glass one. That's worked into the paragraph too.
So maybe it's, I think you have to think of it when you're writing your first paragraph, not just on its own. Like you have to see it in the context of the scene and the paragraph, or it'll feel too detached compared to everything else you're then writing after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of like if you have that spectacular open line, you kind of need that segue into the rest of the body of the work.
Mm-hmm. Like if you start with a dead body, then you need to make sure the next paragraph talks more about why the dead body is there.
Yeah, why the dead body is dead.
Yeah.
And also try to keep the voice, because I did notice there are a few books, and I can't think of any specifically, but I just remember thinking while I've read a couple books that the voice in the first sentence is kind of different from the voice in the rest of the paragraph or the book, because they spent so much time trying to get it perfect that it kind of became maybe too formal almost, if that makes sense, like too detached from the feeling of everything else. We've got one from a comment from Books RS, she says, as a writer, I struggle with captivating first sentences, but after I reread it, I hate it. That happens a lot.
Yes.
I rewrote
I go
my
through
honest
that phase
chapter,
where I hate
but-
literally everything that I write.
Yeah.
Yep.
I look
That's
at
when
it-
you have to step back and then come back a little later. You're like, oh, all right, it's not that bad. You just need some distance.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes
why
you need-
should
yeah.
never delete everything completely. Put it in a separate folder somewhere, but don't don't angry delete all your words so that you can never get them back.
Sometimes it helps to
Or
just
back
send
them
the
up and then
paragraph.
angry delete them, just to
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah.
It can help sending your chapter or paragraph or something to someone else, like a beta reader. Like, I hated the first chapter I just wrote last week, and I spent, like, days just agonizing over this chapter over and over and over again. I delete it, rewrite it, rewrite it, rewrite it. One day I literally stared at the screen for an hour and couldn't do anything, which never happens. So I emailed Kelly and I was like, I hate it. Tell me if I need to change the voice or what's wrong with it. And her comments were enough to, like, shake something loose in my brain. And I was like, oh, this is what's wrong. And
Because
then
I didn't hate it, so.
see? Sometimes that's all it takes. So I circled back, rewrote it, and now I'm just, like, 3 chapters from being done. Thank God.
I think if you have the right beta readers, then you are always going to be harder on yourself than
Because
they
you
are.
want them to.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
want to impress them.
Yeah. And like your beta readers, you're going to tell yourself you suck. Like it's going to happen probably once every day or two. But like your beta readers are never going to be like, yeah, you suck. Like you should just stop now.
Hopefully not. If they are, you need to take them to the
If
current.
they do, then you don't want to continue with the beta reader.
No.
All right, so we've talked about
First lines mostly.
first lines,
Yeah.
first paragraphs a bit, because we've already been going for a bit. So
On to chapters.
first pages.
Oh, pages. Right. Skipping a stage.
First page. First page, you usually don't get tons of room. Kaylin
First
talked about
page
this in
is like
her
your
video.
Yeah, like that.
Really.
The first line, the early summer skies color a cat vomit. Like this is the first page. That's all you get.
Yeah.
Like out of this whole thing, that's what you get. For most people, this is where they stop reading. I've never stopped
this
reading
much.
after the first page. Yeah.
We're not
But-
normal book readers.
Yeah, it's true.
All there is
no.
for Ignite. That much.
So that's how many paragraphs? Like 3? 2.
1, 2, 3,
This one is
4.
4.
4, but mine
paragraphs.
has 2 little ones. 2 baby
Yeah.
paragraphs.
So how much has happened by the end of the first page in some of the books you have in front of you?
Somebody's dead. In Ignite,
Surprise.
from the first chapter, someone's dying, and the end of the page, somebody is now dead.
I know right away in this one that there's a crazy lady in the attic, which is pretty interesting. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
I've got the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants in front of me. And the first page is still just talking about the pants, just what the pants look like, where they probably came from. And I'd say that's a lot of stuff not happening in a first page, but it's the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. So it did pretty well.
See, I have a book here that voice has a huge impact for me. Like
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. All right, so this isn't a young adult. This is just a all-encompassing book. I think it's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and this is really big. Like, look how many words Douglas Adams got for his first page. Like, it's
Yeah.
gigantic. But the only thing that happens in all of these pages is you get a setting from here to here is just setting, and then from here to here is author Dent waking up.
But it does not matter.
It
Yeah.
works because
Douglas
the
Adams.
voice is like the greatest thing since sliced bread. This
It says a lot.
favorite
Like,
book in the entire world.
if you have the captivating voice, it doesn't necessarily have to be action-y, like we were talking about. You have to jump into the action, but there are other ways to grab a reader's attention other than like something happening big.
Yeah, and I think in the first page, your voice is really what captivates readers, less so than your action, because your character can only do so much in like 200 words.
Yeah.
But if the character has a really strong voice, like in Shadow and Bone, it just describes the orphans after that first paragraph, and it's like, the boy was this, the girl was different, and she knew it. And it has just such a strong voice that it's like, oh, well, the girl's different. How is she different? Let's keep reading.
Yeah.
We have a question from Rose. For first pages, has it ever been painful to read over what you wrote and dread the fact that somebody may hate it? Yes. Yes, it has.
Oh, yeah.
Every day. Not every day. Lots of days.
Most days.
I mean, and it's not even just yeah, it's not even just potential like readers of when the book is done, like beta readers sending it to any of the WordNerds currently. It's still like, I have so much work to do before anyone reads this. It's definitely anxiety driven.
Yeah.
And I think I have a writing group that I will show them my first draft stuff, because I like having some people seeing it telling me, like, no, you're doing okay, you're on the right track. Because that gives me, like, weird validation. But other than that, for the most part, I agree with Stephen King's advice to write your novel with your first draft with the door closed. Don't stress about, but what if so-and-so doesn't like it and so-and-so hates it and this agent hates it, because it's your first draft and everyone's going to hate it if you put it out right after you've finished it. Like, it's going to need revisions.
This is the first time ever in history anyone's, and she's gone. Kelly's gone.
Oh.
I would say this is the first time anybody's ever read my first draft. As I'm writing the anthology, I'm sending it over to Kelly because I've got such a strict deadline to stick to that, like, I don't have time to circle back and edit the first draft because I have to finish writing the first draft, and she's got to, like, edit right behind me as I'm writing. So I write a little and she gets it, and then I write a little and she gets it, and I write. And I'm like, I was so, like, all in my email, I'm like, this is just the first draft. This is, like, I know it's terrible. Please, please, please. But she says it's not as bad as I think, which is encouraging. But she's gone to not validate what I said, so I could be lying to you. She could say it's garbage. But it's nerve-wracking. Like, the first draft is usually somewhat a stream of consciousness. You know, you're kind of trying to work out the plot on paper. Hopefully it's readable.
Hopefully your characters are doing things you didn't expect them to do.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not just anything too surprising for yourself to read. But it's intimidating to send it to people.
Yeah. I know this is, like, totally ironic coming from me because I'm, like, the queen of stressing out about the future. But you should ideally write a book because you love writing. You shouldn't be writing to get published.
Or to please other people.
Yeah, or to please other people. Because the people who you want reading your books are going to know if you're just doing it because this is what's in right now, or because you want to have your book on a shelf.
Definitely. And it'll usually come across, if you love your book, it should come across within a couple of pages that, like, oh, I believe this voice, and I believe this character, and I believe in this story, and I want to keep reading because it captivated me. Kelly, you missed our chat about first drafts and how I sent you for the first time ever my very, very, very first draft of anything. Don't do it. Don't do it, kids. Unless you have to, don't do it. I don't recommend it. Although Kelly's been very nice. See what else we have.
Can we talk at all about first pages? A little bit.
Yeah. We have a really good related question, though, before we, like, move on. Lally Donald asked, does anybody actually know where to get beta readers?
That is a good question.
Absolute right.
Yeah,
I was going to recommend Absolute Right.
It's great. It's a forum, is what it is. And you can comment, and you can talk about your stories with people, and that's how some of the WordNerds met, was through Absolute Right.
Yeah, they actually have a password-protected section of their website where you can upload a chapter, and people will critique it in the comments of, like, that thread, and that's just kind of how you build relationships with people if you frequent there enough.
But you do have to have a couple of posts. Don't just go there and post that.
Yeah, like, don't have your work be the very first thing you post.
Yeah,
you want to put yourself out there. Give your input to someone else's work before. And there was something, there was an analogy for that, and I can't remember what it was.
Give before you get.
Yeah.
honey.
Well, it's just like a rule for absolutewrite.com as well that you do have to have a certain amount of posts
literally, it's in the rule book.
Yeah. I don't know how many posts it is, but you do have to have
It's a rule for the site, but it's also a rule for, morale and efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. Just so they're not getting all these people being like, can you comment on my chapter? And we're like, have never posted anything else there before.
You could also try looking for local writing groups, or if you're in high school, I know my high school had an advanced composition class or a creative writing class that if I wanted to look for someone there, I could have been directed in the right way to find someone.
And if your school doesn't have a club like that, talk to your English teacher or talk to an English teacher you like, because you could start it, because every school is packed full of writers, even if they aren't admitting it.
Yeah.
I never admitted it.
Yeah, I didn't either. I should have. But you can also, NaNoWriMo is coming all too quickly.
That's a good point too, yeah.
And Camp Nano is in July. That's a great way to meet people, because you're stuck in a cabin with other people for an entire month.
Yeah. And you can specify putting you in a related cabinet with people who write things that you do.
Camp Nano should have a physical location where you're actually stuck in a cabin with a
Right?
bunch of friends.
That would be amazing.
That'd either be the best thing ever or the worst.
No, the best.
Productivity.
Have a bunch of writers. That'd be awesome.
We could fake it and just set up a webcam cabin.
Yep.
To everyone writing. Make sure no one gets
Everyone's
distracted.
under a blanket for it.
WordNerds should start up a
blanket
camp.
forts. I'm so up for doing that.
Camp WordNerds.
Yeah.
Join
Your own
us.
little write-a-thon. I would do it.
Totally.
And this year, they're even changing Camp NaNoWriMo up a little bit more, so you can have a private cabin where you actually get to say I want to be in a cabin with these people, and they will put you in that cabin, and then you can open up the rest of your spaces to people you don't know. So if you know you want to have this friend and have your back or whatever, you can do that, which is awesome.
I thought
that's what we were trying to do last time, but
it didn't work.
None of us got
they changed
together.
it completely this time though, because last time you could say I want these people, and
You weren't there.
put you
It was
together.
more of a suggestion than it was a definite I want to be in this cabin.
Yeah, this one it's as far as I understand, you can create your cabin as long as you request that person and they request you.
Oh, cool. That would have been better because I was so mad I didn't get any of the people I asked for.
I got Kelly.
Didn't get one person.
I didn't write very much, but I had Kelly in my cabin.
I'd be curious if any of our viewers are doing Camp NaNoWriMo. Let us know what your...
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know your username.
We can build a WordNerds cabin.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
We've got a quick, slightly off-topic question from Jenny. She's wondering if we're teen fiction writers. Yes, most of us write young adult. All of us.
I think all of us.
Yeah. We might dabble in middle grade or new adult, but
Yeah.
But we're all
Mainly
young
YA.
adult. Hence the
Predominantly YA,
yeah.
So yes, we are all teen fiction writers, just genre teen fiction.
We are not teenagers.
No.
I wish.
Far from it.
I still feel like a teen.
Yeah,
I
make
do.
young, irresponsible decisions.
I forgot I wasn't the other day because I saw something. I'm like, yeah, me too. And I was like, wait, I'm not a teenager. So it was something like,
You were.
have you ever walked by a group of teenagers and you're intimidated, but you're a teenager? I'm like, yeah. Wait,
No.
crisis of self. I
Existential
haven't been one
crisis.
for years.
That's so true.
Long time.
It's.
That's
I should
hilarious.
not be. It's ridiculous that I'm a legal adult. Who let this happen? Like,
Time.
I'm wondering if I click on your thing, if I can see your Disney movie collection in the background, but I can't. But I know it's there.
it's right. It's that. That's those. It's those. It's not two shelves.
A lot of movies. Meanwhile, I'm scotch taping
That's
things.
a lot of
to my
VA.
desk.
Yeah. It's I've been needing to go to the doctor a lot lately, and it's Mom, can I fill out the form so you can call all the doctors and just make my appointments for me?
It's always calling the doctor is just the worst. Why isn't that one of the worst things?
I will
Calling.
go to the
is.
doctor. I just don't want to call them.
That's so true. Because the receptionists are scary sometimes. That's why.
They're terrifying.
I also think that I know a lot. And I'm like, oh, I don't. You asked me about
what's
my
your social security number? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know.
I've got that down now. I will not share it here because
College,
I know
how
enough
Yeah,
can you
about
get
it.
it down?
internet security, no sharing of private
Social
information.
security. We got slightly off topic. What are we talking about?
did.
First 4 impressions.
First page.
Right.
We've talked about. First paragraph, we've covered. Enough. First
Chapter
page,
we haven't yet.
done. First chapter. The first chapter is usually the only thing, if that you'll get to send to a literary agent. Sometimes they'll ask for the first 3 chapters, but usually it's like first 5 to 10 pages, and that's going to pretty much be your first chapter. So, first chapters. How do we make sure that they grab attention and are good?
No info dump. Absolutely no info dump.
Yeah,
That's
don't
what
tell me
people
about
say.
her life or her favorite food or his class schedule. I don't want to know. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I also
And
think
for
it's
me-
not necessary. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying that at the end of the first chapter is where, if you follow a beat sheet, that's like usually where a hook should be, like a hook scene. To where even if the entirety of the first chapter isn't outstanding, if that hook at the end of that chapter is enough, I'll turn the page and continue reading.
Mm-hmm.
I think also you want to make sure that you're not info dumping, not just on like world building or like the past of this character's life, but also just like details about the character.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some people just have like bricks of bricks of paragraphs that are just like physical descriptions for like pages, and if it's too much all at once, like you don't need to line out exactly what they look like. In fact, if you leave a little bit up to the imagination or describe them in a different way other than like, she had blue eyes, she was pale, she had this length hair, it was this color, she was like, you don't have to go through all of that for me to care. In fact, it might be better to hold back.
Yeah, and that's a little hard when you introduce a lot of characters in the first paragraph. Like, for me, I think I'm settling on picking like the one characteristic that kind of stands out for the character and just describing it that way. Like, I know when my main character's best friend is introduced, I think the only physical description I give, people are screaming outside.
I can hear that.
They're being murdered.
Oh my god.
Maybe.
It's now I can't think because of the screaming.
It's a good first line. I can't think because of the screaming.
Actually, that would be a good
that's
first
a great
line. I would read the crap out of that.
Okay, so yeah, the first time that the best friend of my main character is introduced, I think the only line of physical description I give is her hair falls in an effortless way, mine never will.
Ooh,
And
I like that. See, I think if you can find unique ways to describe a character, like I will read about character descriptions as long as it's not like over the top too much, because there are like, I don't need to know every last detail, but it's cool to know, like, to get a mental picture, and if you do it in a unique way that's not like a mirror scene or something that's like been done so many times, and unique enough to capture my interest, and I'm going to keep reading and not roll my eyes.
Yeah. But again, I mean, all rules are made to be broken, but not necessarily all rules are made to be broken.
Also, not necessarily when you first are a beginning writer, because everyone else thinks they can break the rules too, and then that results in a lot of really cliche, awful things that do make me roll my eyes. Like if I read one more mere description, that's used to describe how beautiful the character is, and really,
how beautiful the character is, but how they don't realize how beautiful they are.
That's so plain.
Ugly.
So
plain.
Yep.
No.
So plain. Everyone keeps telling me I'm a model, and I just don't understand why, because I'm so ugly.
Yeah.
But I've got perfect skin and big eyes and perfect hair that's just like
golden hair.
I'm so plain.
Dang.
I'm too thin. My boobs are too big.
Yes. The too thin thing makes me want to strangle someone. I've always hated my perfect figure through my entire life. I'm like,
It must be so hard being you.
Oh.
I think changing the subject a little. Your first chapter needs to have at least one complete scene. I usually put 2 scenes in a chapter. But your scenes need to have conflict, and it's really easy to overlook that at the beginning because the character's life is so good. How could they want anything? Nothing's come in to shake up their world yet. But even in those beginning chapters, your character needs to want something, and something needs to be in the character's way of getting it. That provides conflict right from the beginning.
And you have to do it in a correct way that it's not like suddenly all of your plot is sitting on the first chapter. Because I have read stories that are like too rushed and early, but you do want to have something trigger the rest of the book. You've got to have some kind of leaping off part where like you fired the gun and here we go. Like,
yeah, and that's that hook moment I was talking about. Something happens that isn't necessarily the first plot point. It might not necessarily be something that changes the outlook of the characters per se, but something big has to happen to where it's like, okay, now I need answers.
Yeah.
Like I just checked. The first chapter of Ignite ends with an archangel that the main character thought was dead is right in front of her, and she's a demon. So it's like, oh, well, going forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's called an inciting incident.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-oh moment. Wow.
And
Eloquence.
incident.
Yeah.
Yes, the inciting incident.
Yes. Indeed.
Do we have, speaking of first chapters / just chapters as a whole, does anybody have preferences for chapter length for either writing or just reading them? I know I personally I like books with shorter chapters because we were talking about this pre-chat. I can read a book much faster with shorter chapters because I can convince myself into like, oh, it's just this much more until the next chapter. You have time. Like 2 hours later, I close the book. I'm like, well, that happened.
Yeah. I like the shorter chapters. I'm still conflicted on how long I want my own chapters to be because I try now to just write in scenes because I stress out too much about chapter length. And if they're not, like, exactly the same length, like, within a couple hundred words of each other, I'm like, okay, I need to cut this. And I'm like, that's insane. Every chapter doesn't have to be the exact same length. That's ridiculous. And so I'm just writing in scenes, and then I'll lump them all together.
I think as long as you have mostly complete scenes. Like, I don't try to cut a scene in half and have it over 2 chapters unless it's for, like, an effect, you know? As long as you have... a little bit excited dog. We have a quick comment here from Rose. She says, slightly off topic, how does one become a word nerd? You are a word nerd because you watch. If you are part of our word nerd family by watching our videos, well then you're part of our word nerd family because you're watching our videos. And then on topic, what was your favorite first chapter for a book and do you remember how it started? So do we have any chapters that stood out?
Wait, can you repeat that? Sorry, I was...
favorite first chapters for any books that you've read that have stood out.
Oh, okay.
I can't think of a chapter, just lines.
I really loved the first chapter of Throne of Glass, which was our Word Nerd book club a while back.
True.
I read that and I was excited because I wanted to know why Selena had been locked up and who the prince was, and I wanted to learn more about this captain of the guard. Hold on. I love him so much. I just finished book 2, so I've got a lot of emotions right at the surface.
So many feelings.
I need to start book 2, but I have to read Across the Universe first.
Yeah, I'm starting that.
Wait until September. The next book doesn't come out until September, and I didn't know.
I've heard it's amazing.
Oh,
I've heard the next book is so good.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
But yes, that was the first chapter that I remember starting and immediately being like, I like the main character, her voice. She's already sassy. I can tell she's violent. She's ornery because she's like, you think I'm stupid? And then the rest of the book just got better from there. That was a good first chapter.
Yeah. So this is an example of a prologue first chapter that I actually think did its job very well. Harry Potter.
That is a good one.
It sets the stage for this super magical world without even really showing you a ton of the magic, but you know something big is going to be happening. And Harry Potter's there, and he's on the doorstep. And it's like, what's going to happen next?
The bear. Everything Harry Potter.
So much.
So much Harry Potter feelings. What other books are good?
And J.K. Rowling has started tweeting more recently. Oh, that one was really
also had a
good.
good first chapter. It was actually a first prologue chapter, and it was a prologue that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I've mentioned that, unsurprisingly, a couple of times. Also, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, we were talking about that earlier. That had a chapter, the first chapter, that intrigued me, because didn't we get some kind of hint about the angel following her in the first chapter?
Mm-hmm.
And there was enough of her voice.
At the very end of it, it was like his perspective following her.
Did the wishes come into the first chapter? Because I feel like that's what really hooks me.
Yeah, I think it was at the art class with the little.
Yeah, he's making him itch.
Right in his butt.
Yes.
That's a good. I also immediately was drawn. I think what makes a first chapter impeccable or kind of like is voice and pacing. Like if I don't like the voice and I don't connect with the main character, I'm not going to care about the book. Even if it's a great plot, if I can't connect, I've got a problem. And of course, pacing. If it's too slow and nothing's happening, I'm bored. And if it's too quick and everything's happening, then I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any last questions?
Just looking through, I see some people say most chapters are about 2,000 words. That's plenty. Most of my chapters are like, around 2. Dana said she prefers short chapters. Reading definitely seems to go by faster. Long chapters just need to be faster paced, otherwise it seems to drag. And then
It feels like a sense of accomplishment. It's just like, I finished one. Yeah. Okay, do it again.
Yeah. I'm always hesitant to start a chapter that's like 20 plus pages long, because I'm like, do I have time to actually read this before I'm going to get interrupted? Because I don't want to stop reading. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my thing. I don't
have
stop
time.
reading mid-chapter.
Yeah.
Because then it's hard for me to get back into it after I come back. I have to stop at the chapter marks, which is why I guess I particularly like the smaller chapters.
Mine gets even worse. I have to stop not only at a chapter marker, but I'd prefer if it's a 3, 5, 8, or 10 chapter marker, because I'm crazy. And Mr. Girl says she also loves short chapters. Long chapters seem too daunting, and then she's worried that she'll have to go take a break, like we just said. But if it's shorter, she'll read 5 times the amount that she would have with long chapters. If I have a bunch of short chapters, it might add up into one like super long chapter, but I could also
doesn't feel that way because you get those breaks.
You feel in control. Like, I can stop anytime I want.
That's amazing.
I feel like an addict. I'm not addicted to this book. I can stop whenever I want.
I can stop now. No.
I don't want to.
All right, so I think we got all the questions here. Anything else anybody wants to add before we start wrapping it up?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Just don't stress it. Make it shine in revisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't stress a first draft. Dear Lord, you will not survive it if you are stressing the first version of your first chapter, because...
Yeah.
All right, so thank you everybody for joining us. If you are just tuning in, we are leaving, so I'm sorry. This video will be up on our channel forever, unless we explode or the world plummets out of space or something. Maybe it'll still be there. I don't know how the internet works. If the world ends, will it still be there? Maybe. What am I getting to again? All right.
If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, does it make a sound?
Does it? We'll never know.
Because if the world ends, we'll be dead.
Signing off now.
We hope you enjoyed our live chat about the first 4 impressions of a book, of the inside of a book. First sentence, first paragraph, first page, first chapter. And if you guys have any suggestions for future topics, next week we are going to be having our book chat about Across the Universe, the book, not the movie with the Beatles. The book, it's a young adult science fiction. That one. That's the one. So we hope you can join us then, and if you have questions, shoot them at us. But if you have any suggestions for future week's topics, leave them below. We will look at them and choose, and maybe we'll talk about something you suggested, which would be pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yes.
So we love you, nerds, and we will see you next week. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.